Took me 2 hours to get back from picking up my daughter who lives 4 hours away.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. You just don't think it's gonna happen, but when it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
You're just like, wow, can't believe my eyes.
My son is fixing up our live stream. I'm delighted you've this, Tricia. This is fantastic.
I'm excited. I really am.
Do you have a lot of
Mm.
students with tutoring?
Yeah, in January I had 71 students, and I haven't recounted how many, but I bet you I'm in the 50s. I have to say about 56 kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do they find you? How do they come
Well,
to you?
of course, it's word of mouth, and then next thing is out school. So I have so many tricks I could teach y'all on out school to get out there, because I don't offer one-on-one throughout school. That's the trick. That's the one major trick. So they contact me saying, I see you only have classes, but do you offer one-on-one? And I say, yes, of course I do. So it's like they're doing the advertising for me. They could read all about me and see, and that's how they get a hold of me, is through out school.
Yeah.
Which I don't think out school cares, because I know they read your emails, and I know they watch you tutor. So I know they haven't gotten rid of me yet. I've been there 2 years, so I think they know that people are going to do that, you know. But I'm not going to offer one-on-one there, I'm going to offer it through my own, so I can make 100% for 70. Of course I am. That's my prerogative to decide. So that's a big one.
We need to be absolutely everywhere because so many are falling through the cracks. I mean,
So many. And my classes are real, like I have that poetry class, I have the mind mapping class. So it's like everything that's helped me the most. So it's almost advertising too for the other tutors that see it, the types of classes that I offer, not just the phonics. So that
Yeah.
helps too.
I was just reading a story about emotions and empathy. I'll have to read the title of it, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
to touch it now. But it's about emotions and literacy. And he's a professor now talking about learning in high school. But what he says in high school is relevant to any child we teach. If you're not engaged in it, the kids are going, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's got to be step number 1, not step number 10. So, fascinating. Anyway, I've just got to finish reading it. Tabs open, because the moment
Yeah.
I close them, I'll never find them again. or
No,
never read it.
I Facebook them to myself, and that's where I journal everything, because it takes forever for me to pull up anything. But I know if I Facebook myself through Messenger, everything I want to read, it's right there.
Oh, that's a good
And
idea.
it goes so quick too, just like quick to put in
Yes.
there too.
Yes. Just the link.
Quickest.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the link.
Tricia, I'm delighted to
Yeah.
have you here today. Can we start, Isaac?
Yes. Yes.
4 o'clock. Thank you. Today we welcome Tricia Cook from Alabama.
Yes, Birmingham, Alabama.
Perfect. Tricia's interests focus on alternative and holistic education, such as explicit instruction, neurodiversity, literacy tutoring, learning difference, positive mindset, and learning environments. She presents an alternative perspective, as she definitely has a divergent mind. Tricia feels like a wise and revolutionary educator who listens to the children by following their needs. She believes in Maria Montessori's observation of trusting the universe along with the child. If we love and trust our children, this becomes inner thoughts, ideas, feelings, intents, dreams, and purposes. Welcome. To start, can you tell us a little about your story and how you got here?
Sure thing. So it was 1983. I was struggling so terribly bad, and I was going to some of the best schools in New Orleans. And it was actually where I was going to almost a new school every year by that time. And I was already in second grade, but age 8. So I was held back before. And my mom, they had Montessori teachers tell my mom, you need to go have her tested. So I was tested for actually central auditory processing disorder and a learning difference. And as you guys know, that means average to higher IQ with problems in reading and math. So, but it's just like no the help was really given. It was like, okay, you got this label, but I didn't get in. The only help that I got is my mom had a private tutor for me. But it wasn't actually until high school where I was pulled for resources because I was in private schools before then. So resource class, but the teacher didn't really help. I had peers that helped me out even there. So don't get me wrong, the extra test timing, books on tape, everything helped get me through college a good bit. But um, this, yeah. So I ended up becoming a reading specialist because I had a mentor at the State Department here in Alabama say, man, you keep on writing your teacher trainings on literacy. You need to become a reading specialist. I never crossed my mind. I was like, okay, I'll do it. And so as I was learning how others learn, is basically what happened. I was retraining my brain to learn. I had no idea that was happening. Um, so actually, they weren't heavy on in the program to tell us about dyslexia or reading struggles, but just different tools to use for those who struggle. That if you know what I'm talking about, so it's where they bombarded with for us then in that time was a lot of graphic organizers. So these graphic organizers, I started using them then when I was on my master. I was like, these are really working for me. And then it occurred to me, well, I've always liked webs. So, yeah. And so the web now has turned into what they call mind maps, which are key to teach students with dyslexia because you start with a mind map that looks like a web. They can make it as colorful as they like. If they can make it as interesting as they like. They can add graphs. They could add drawings to it. They can add colors. And it adds shape, size, dimension, which is great for our evaluative skills. So actually, I teach those. But right now, I have mind maps in my head. So I mentally can see those and add information to them going in a clockwise manner. So I know I could scaffold my students to do it. So they're using mind maps, some with still. Now I'm in classes with some without mind maps being used. So that is key, I thought, to help me retrain. But I didn't know if you wanted me to go on, but
No, it's good to have a
I'm
stop
good.
because it allows
Okay.
us to evaluate. So where did you go
Mm-hmm.
to college and what happened at college?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I went to the University of Alabama, and I was online for the reading specialist certification there. And it was good. I mean, I had good professors. I had a very good experience there. Um, 2 years later, I had a friend say, "Why don't you get your Orton Gillingham training with me?" And so I did with her. That was fine. That was a good experience. I did. I didn't struggle so much because I didn't feel much pressure because it wasn't being graded. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was fine. But when I got to go to my work on my doctorate, so the school is the University of Alabama. It did not go well. I was doing what you're supposed to be doing, reading articles and spitting back exactly what the professor wanted you to say. See, which I didn't know too much about my brain and understanding that I think in a divergent mind, that's one that's going to think about feelings, facts, I mean, feelings and future. That's all it's going to care about. So it's not going to care so much to say this qualitative and kind of quantitative and quantitative type research. It's actually the opposite of that. It's more observation, getting my own hypothesis in and my own theory, and then stating what I come to conclude from that. So it was really did not go well. So I left after 2 years in it. So I just could not be put in that box of read this, say this, and you got to say what everybody else says. And then you get these positive comments from the professor because you synthesized perfectly, So,
That's
eh.
interesting because I chose
Mm,
not to do any further studies because it was
mm,
too stressful for me, really. Doing the reading,
mm,
and and doing all
mm,
the actual writing is what
mm, mm, mm,
thrown me at that academic level, which they expect. I
yeah.
don't think that professors really understand the lifelong implications of not reading and writing effectively early on.
That's right. Because they didn't have to experience it themselves. So few of them did. And they have that scientific type reasoning that ours is more off of observations and trusting what our observations are through adaptive skills.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
Yeah, my my youngest son used to ask, "Why are there
mm,
no teachers that think like them?" And I said, "Well,
mm,
because if you struggled in school, probably the last
yeah,
place you want to spend your adult years is in school." So I think it's fantastic that we are getting learners that are now becoming teachers that can help these guys.
yes.
So, Tricia, when you went to
Mm,
school, were you ever in a public school setting?
yeah, so it's just until high school
So,
that I became in a public school setting. Yeah.
and that was, did you say that was the Montessori type of schooling?
No, that Montessori school was second grade,
Okay.
just one of the many private schools I went to. Um, but I was going to say my undergraduate, if y'all had read my story, didn't go so well. I had a professor I was about to end, it was my senior year, stopped me after reading a paper and saying, "You'll never graduate. You will never be a teacher if I can help it." Because a paper that I had written that I have to say must have been disorganized, but I met with her twice in the attempt to get this paper right, you
yeah,
know. And she had my letter, which I didn't understand, and I had met with her, and the effort was definitely there. I was just about to graduate, but I ended up graduating. I actually changed counselors, and we worked out my schedule, and Selena had gone over, and I ended up graduating right on time. But that was where you might have read where you can develop anger towards your learning difference. I was angry at that situation, but I didn't call it anger. So
So
that
that's
definitely made me angry.
I'm always interested in the social emotional part of all of
Yeah,
this. Lois,
that's the one I love to talk about. I love it.
so that's I misunderstood your story. I thought you were in private school until your high school years, but it sounds like
No,
you.
I was in private school up until high school.
Oh, gotcha. And then in high
That,
school, that was public.
yes, so high
So,
school was my public
okay.
first
So
public
when
experience.
you were in,
Mm,
where did you get the most support? Was that in the private schools,
no,
public
no.
school?
No.
Neither.
No, getting when I was in college, when I had gotten books on tape, extra test time, tutoring center, all of that was probably the best I've ever got.
So then, when you were
Yeah,
younger, can you tell us a little bit more how you felt emotionally?
right. So, what I've found being a tutor teacher myself is nobody had ever looked at the social emotional, what was going on. So I had developed a lot of anger, and I didn't realize that until I was 40. I was like, okay, I'm finally learning as I want to learn. Why am I still having problems with insecurity and unsurety about myself? So I had to go back in my mind and revisit some of the situations that happened. And one of them being when I was in first grade. See, because you could play it back in your head like it's today because we have the 3D thinking. So she was standing over behind me and she was very angry at me. I want to say she was yelling, and I remember shutting down and looking only at the other kids' faces, looking at me as it was happening. And so nobody said, "Are you angry about this?" So that situation had made me angry, but nobody ever had me verbalize or talk about situations that occurred like that. Now I think about shame. I think about my biggest thing when I was young. I had to always write stories of stories. I don't know, a lot of dyslexic kids write about mysteries and fictional stories. And I brought it to school because I thought, I know I'm going to get a good grade on this. My story is amazing. So I brought it to school. The teacher marked it up all with red X's and circles and all these types of things. So I said to myself, I will never write again. And that's a type of intent that goes with your soul forever,
Yes,
that kind of
yes,
speaking out, that kind of
yes,
things.
yes,
I really stopped myself from wanting to write at that point, and I had felt a lot of shame, but nobody said, I got a lot of emotional support from my mom because I probably cried a lot. I did cry a lot actually. And so um so nobody said, are you feeling shame? Are you feeling shameful right now? So I never got to verbalize any of the two things that were the major emotions that we're feeling at the time. So now as a tutor, I have a checklist so we can look at the social emotional first before we even get into the intervention. And I have a name for it. It's called the anger shame checklist, but then it's got of course, official name. But it
yeah,
has a lot of the things that you'll see with a child who's experiencing anger,
yeah,
like defensiveness.
yeah,
That's a huge one. And so if a parent says, well, what do you mean defensive? I have the perfect answer for this because they'll say, because the dog looked at me wrong,
yeah,
just out of the ordinary type of stories, that we make up. But um, because the sun was in my eyes, but we know that could be hypersensitive or optic nerve. But just any kind of excuse they give or say is not an excuse. It's because they're feeling angry, is what it is. That's the defense. And the biggest one for shame that's on my checklist is shut down, of course, I have to say. And of course, I have crying and whining on there. Um, so parents, they mark off the anger chain checklist and we talk about it. And what I found is for anger, you need most for is strength. Strength for anger. You don't, it's hard to understand why this is the truth, but have you ever met an angry person who wants to look at their anger and observe their anger or talk about it? I have not. So, strength is what's needed for anger. For shame, you need empathy the most. So, on that checklist, you'll see sensitive, caring. Well, the people who have shame care way more for others and how they speak to others than they have to their own selves, right? So you need empathy and care most for your own self, which I still hadn't had at 40 when I was insecure and unsure. So I talked to parents about that. I sent them a list of things that you could do. A lot of them holistic, sometimes Christian, if they have Christian background. For the case being it being a Christian, it would be instead of strength, I say great. Sorry, mercy. If it's shame, I say grace. So again, it's real alternative and holistic. But what's interesting that is they said, I'm so glad you brought up this about my child. I don't think it would have been mentioned otherwise that
yes,
because it wasn't for me, but we can also say that mine thing happened in the 80s and I don't know, and generations before
yeah.
them. But you'd think they would bring it up now, but it doesn't appear when I get those comments back to me. Um,
It's
so,
something I've never done with students.
mm-hmm,
I have always avoided it. I haven't talked about it,
mm-hmm,
gone on to the teaching in a different way. But I think you're right. It's something that has to be acknowledged. I only approach it when my students are reading, and that's when they
mm-hmm,
have the words to say, "This is what happened to me."
mm-hmm,
Da da da.
mm-hmm.
And my mind
Yeah.
boggles. My mind just boggles, and I think
Mm-hmm.
we're unaware of the depth of shame that young
Mhm.
children feel.
That's right. That's
Inability to
absolutely.
do something. And like you said, you
Mhm.
put in all this work to write a paper and it comes back,
Mhm.
this is not
Yeah.
good enough.
and it was never going to be about them. It was going to be about me. I put this on me, something's wrong with me. It was never going to
Yes.
be on the teacher who I looked up to so
Yes.
much.
Yes.
But I was going to say, if a parent doesn't want that evaluation that includes the anger and shame, you're right. I look to see if my students start to get hyperactive in their mind. A hyperactive mind is one that's feeling and triggered with anger. So something had made them angry when they had written and you're asking them to write.
Yeah.
So uh, I give them, once I see that hyperactivity in the mind start to happen as they read, they start to read ahead before they've even read what's supposed to come. That's a hyperactivity type of thing that I say, okay, I can tell you're ready to get calm with me right now. And we start to breathe. And once they're calm, and I know they're not so anxious, then we start to read again. But I'll say, this is something you'll do. This is what I saw. I saw you start to read ahead before you had gotten finished what you were reading. Let's get calm. Just remember, you need to do that when this happens and start over from where it last made sense to you. And they're like, okay, so they're good with it. So, of course, it would be that every parent would say, yes, I do want the anger change checklist so we can relive the generational stuff that went on and happened to me.
Yeah.
Actually, they do have more that say they want that, but not all of them do. We just start right away with tutoring,
Yeah.
and then again, I say I observe it. And if they bring up social emotional with me, I always mention the parents. They brought this up today, and this is what we did. So, or I saw them get. If they get hypoactive, by the way, that's the parasympathetic. It's starting to shut down. Then I know it's shame. Shame is a hypoactive mode, anger hyperactive. So when I start them to see shut down or just kind of get lethargic, totally lethargic in their speech, even, then I'll say, it's still you still need calm. You still need breath, and you still need calm. So a calm mind has in it. I'm trying to get the word right. Hold on, I brought just in case this
Well
would
done.
happen. I brought my notebook. Brings balance. Anyway, I'm not going to try to say the word, but calm brings balance so that you're not in the hyper or hypo. So,
And teachers have to
mm,
be aware of this when we're working with students who are not getting it. What is the
mm-hmm.
emotional state before we even do come into whatever we're teaching?
Right. Before you start intervention, you should always be aware of what their stressors are. So that's why you need a checklist like that. But you're right. If you don't stop your tutoring for a second to calm because you feel like the parents are going to judge you and, oh, you got 45 minutes. You got to get this in. You got to get that in. I can't hear you. I can't have you breathe. And the thing is none of that's going to even work or be effective until they're calm. So it's not any good, nor these tools that you give them to get calm for the rest of their life. But
Yeah.
once they can say, I use a lot of affirmations. So as soon as I hear I can't, I say, I used to say that too. But you know
Yes.
what? I say to myself now, I am smart, I can do this, and I am loved. And I say that to myself every day. See, if we start them young on this, they don't have to wait till they're 40 and find out that why are they still insecure and unsure? So start it young.
I love that.
Affirmations.
I am smart. I can do this.
I am loved.
I am loved.
Yeah.
I am
Because,
loved.
you know, we grow up with that, like you said, it's my fault.
Mm-hmm.
Fail because it's within me that the failure is. I just can't do it. And that brings a lot of, like the first, well, I can't do it because I'm dumb.
Yep. I was gonna say I was said I was stupid plenty of
Yeah.
times to mothers, and that became my inner thought.
Yeah.
So the thing is it's hard to develop empathy for yourself, but I'm telling you, if you tell your child every day, say to themselves, I am loved, I am loved. You do it to 4 to 6 weeks, it becomes a habit, at least. You still might not believe it, but it becomes part of your habit.
Yes.
Eventually, you've told yourself enough, you rewire your brain to definitely believe it. But you just got to start it now. And that you can do it. Of course that you can do it. So I do yoga. So I've tried yoga when I was teaching, so that didn't work. So I try yoga. So I have classes for yoga and meditation, and it's called Remembering Calm. And I have it mostly for teenagers because I talk to them all about what I've told you. I tell them my story.
Yes.
I
Yes.
basically say what happens. And I actually do a Bible study for kids, teens also that do the grace and mercy that starts off on that. And it's a good literacy workbook. But so again, we have to start off young because if it's not mentioned, it's going to do them distress in their learning for the rest of their lives if you get that worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I see adults then who they're dealing with depression and anxiety, oftentimes that
Mhm.
started in these earlier school years, and they don't really even want to admit that they had these struggles with especially reading, because we tend to see reading as how smart you are. If you're a good reader, you're smart. And so these poor kids just assume that they're not smart. And like you said, the shame that that causes is really powerful. So that, I see the adults who don't even want to admit that they
Mhm.
struggled in these areas until you question them a little bit more and it comes out that they struggled in those areas. And it's like this light bulb moment goes on when they realize that all of that had nothing to do with who they are and how smart they are, but nobody sat them down to explain that maybe. So I think it's fantastic what you're doing. And first of all, let me just say, first of all, you don't even look like you're anywhere near 40 to begin with. So I think the math might be a little wrong on that. But well, so
That's a good.
how did you
Uh-huh.
come to know that these were
Mm.
your emotions? How did you find
Yeah.
that within yourself?
So when I was 40, I kind of re-examined my life at a night of the soul type of thing. That's so wonderful. That happens to everybody in the process of becoming uh, better individuals, I guess, or for spiritual growth or whatever. So I was re-examining my life, at that time, and went to the Bible first for it. And the Bible, the word strength kind of popped up. Uh, so I found out I was looking at a living Bible. I didn't know what that, nobody ever defined what a living Bible looks like. So strength popped up. And then, so, so then I started thinking about what does strength mean? And then things would come to me or whatever. And it was about anger. But I said, but I wasn't an angry child. I didn't get angry. uh, I'm not an angry person. So again, I had to go relive those moments, like the one with the teacher behind me to say, uh, yeah, I was most likely angry. And what I've learned from that through my studies is it starts off with anger. If anger works for you, you'll stay with anger. And if it doesn't work for you, you go to shame. So that anger was not working. So I went straight into shame and I developed more of the area of shame. And because that was working for me until it stopped working for me. And that's when it stopped working for me. I'm no longer going to live this unhealthy, unhappy person, this life and this reevaluation that I was doing, I got to see what caused this shame. Again, the one example is the circling of the red marks, but there's 10 million more of those examples if you wanted them. But so how do I help these things? That's where I came up with the mercy and grace and then the strength and empathy to come up to help with these things. And that's when I started doing yoga, meditation, affirmations, and of course, prayer. So that's how that all happened with that. So I feel like my brain, I'm now in equanimity. That's the word I was looking for, ladies.
Ah,
Is in equanimity now that it's balanced. I can really trust my own mind. So a lot of it before I never realized how much dyslexics have a very strong mind. I know I always had a strong will. My mom can tell you about that. But I had a very strong mind and I didn't trust it. But now I can trust my mind and I'm like, oh, that's cool. You know what? I can do that. And I'm saying, yes, people might say something if I do it, but it's what my mind says I should do. So let me go research and go put it out there and do it. So that's where I get into my program is my Albert. I talk a lot about neuropedagogy. or goji, right? So in it, you look at psychology, education, and neuroscience, and in it to develop it. But within the psychology part, a lot with positive mindset, a lot with mindedness, okay, a lot with holism. And I feel like that's going to be this key of looking at the whole person, not just bits and pieces in us separately. So hopefully one day everybody will be looking at the social emotionally as equally as how they're doing their literacy development and how well we're learning to read, write, and speak.
Just a
So,
step. We've got a little bit of an echo, Tricia. So I've got
oh,
a question from you for you.
my volume.
Can you turn down your desktop audio, please?
Okay. Is it better?
Sorry to interrupt.
Is
I have help to this.
it better?
I couldn't do it without support. Okay. So you were talking about psychology, neuroscience.
And education. It's neuropedagogy. It's one word. It doesn't have a hashtag yet. There's a lady who's developed it and writes articles about it. I've tried to contact her, but it's really encompasses all three. So of course my Maria Montessori background. I was a Montessori teacher for 15 years, have my certification in it. Of course it appealed to me the most, but it was what I was already doing because I was already realizing we're not meeting their whole needs. We're not meeting the whole child, just as it had for myself.
Yeah. I think even with COVID, I mean, there's such high mental health issues now. And I think the COVID maybe will even swing us into what you're talking, that we're having to look at these things with our kids in school. Like up
Mhm.
until now, we weren't doing that as much. And to be
Mhm.
fair, a lot of schools, they're underfunded, and some schools don't even have psychologists or counselors, or they have like one nurse that goes through different to different buildings, and they just don't have enough support. But I think with the
Is it still
COVID, at
echoing?
least I'm hoping that one of the good things that come out of this is that we take mental health
Mhm.
way more seriously. And instead of, who can read the fastest and get the best test
Mhm.
grades, maybe we're going to also see who's
Yeah.
having a balanced life and happy and not feeling depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, drug use, and all
Right.
that. So hopefully that'll be a positive.
I think the overemphasis on standardized tests and getting 100 or 90
Mhm.
test, is really puts our students in the wrong mindset.
Mhm. Dyslexic students, we do best with multiple choice. If we are offered anything, that's one of the ones where I've seen in research that we do better with is, but there is no testing that goes along with the types of perception that we have. We perceive things literally different from everybody else. So when you're saying how's a character's feeling, we're gonna have several different answers to how that person's feeling. We're not gonna have one answer, and it's gonna be based off of how we perceived it. So it's almost impossible to give a standardized test to somebody who's not standard. I'm totally
Yeah.
divergent.
Yeah.
That's why I said I had trouble in my doctorate degree for that reason. Uh, so
But the idea of a standardized test too, like you're saying, there's one emotion. We ignore the reader in that particular scenario anyway. You've got to read what the author wants, not what I want, and that
mm-hmm,
negates what we're doing with reading anyway, and the emotional connection that we need with.
mm-hmm. Yep, our perceptions come from our own experience. If our experience has been, or we develop the emotion of anger and shame, we're going to view through our lens something with anger and shame. That is going to get hard to get past that if you're not taught a positive mindset and mental activities that go on, that you're even reading into it the way that you're supposed to read. Because everything you perceive at that point will be anger or shame for learning. And there'll be triggers, easy triggers.
Yeah.
For instance, I was doing a podcast of my own, and we were talking about my inability to be able to write well, and I was given specific details on it. and I started to have a mental image or a trigger, and I started stumbling over my words all of a sudden. So you see, I still have that, but I know that I can get calm and it'll get better. So I can still have bad days where I'm sick, hungry, tired, or stressed, where my reading will get much worse, even though I've readapted my whole reading
Yeah.
where I can read and comprehend very well. But if
Yeah.
I just ask myself, what is it, one of those,
That's
and I
so
don't have,
important.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, if
Because
I see a student like
my
that, I
son
say, mm-hmm,
has trouble where if he's trying to explain something to the teacher and in that moment he's getting anxious, it
mm-hmm,
gets much worse and he can't explain what he's trying to explain. But this past year, he was working as a snowboarding instructor, instructing people. And when he felt calm and relaxed and knew his subject, he's very good at explaining things.
mm-hmm.
And I've heard him explain things very well on subjects that he knows. But the
That's
second
right.
he gets frazzled, all bets are off. All bets are off. I see
And he
that
most
all.
likely had a learning trigger based off anger or shame to get to that point where, and also we're all basically interest-based learners. So I ask them, I give another checklist that I didn't mention, and it's based off of learning styles, which is their strength in gifts and strengths is what I call it, but also an interest inventory where I think if you geared everything, every subject matter, every content towards our interests, we'll learn it happily. And
Yeah.
that happily is the
Yeah.
key. Kids have got to learn happily. So we
Yeah.
take the content and we put it into whatever their interest is, the best that we can. If you can make it more applicable and make it to know where they know the why, if you it's a synonymous why of dyslexia, I call it. You give us the why, then you can tell us whatever you want us to learn. I promise you we'll be open at that point. But
Yeah,
give us that time and research to figure out, answer these natural questions that we're having. So that's what we think of
that is
first.
so great.
Thank
This is
you.
fascinating. I love talking
Mm,
about this.
yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
I agree with you.
Mm-hmm,
Before we get to letters and sounds, there's a base for it. And if
mm-hmm,
we're overloading children too early on without
mm-hmm,
having a reason for why I'm doing this, or you have to do it because I said so as the teacher,
mm-hmm.
lose them.
Yeah, and there's not much time sit in the day for a why. So in my class, the one's called Reading and Research. We base it off of their interest, and we stop at each paragraph, and I'll say, "Did you have a what come up or a why?" Because basically, the pathos and ethos just falls along right with that. And they'll go more times than not, it was a why. Well, let's go look up why, then we'll revisit the passage. We do that throughout the whole passage, and at the end, he's gotten all of his whys met. Guess what happened to all the whats? They were met to. He was building up enough background knowledge of what we were going to go research on his why that they was able to answer the questions much better because he had the freedom or she had the freedom to go answer those whys first.
Yeah.
We explored the whys.
Yeah. I love that. Explore the why. That's easy.
Yeah, the synonymous why of dyslexia is what I call it.
Sorry.
Synonymous why of dyslexia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Oh,
we
excellent.
and we're really carrying again, remember about feelings and future. So if it's something that's relating of feelings and future, we'll want to answer it too. There it goes back to the why. See, in the other type of brain, and the convergent brain will go for the facts, forms, and functions. We can get to the facts, forms, and functions, but let's do the feelings and future first.
That's fantastic. That
I don't Can I
I
ask a
agree.
question?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
I don't
definitely.
know a lot. I've heard mind mapping, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that way. So I don't really get it too much. Like that sounds like a lot of work to me. Mind mapping to me sounds like too much. But for kids that are having, or even adults, anybody who's
Mm-hmm.
having trouble putting words to their emotions, is mind mapping something that can help
Mm-hmm. It can work
that?
with anything. So if I were you, I would put what makes you anxious in the middle, because just like you would in regular mind map, you put the main point of view, the main point, right? So I put what made you anxious, and then I would do a jet out with a circle because I do circles, and you could say why. And then you can brainstorm off from that branch all the whys possibly that you could have had that one trigger. So basically, it will take though that mental imagery of going back. So it's not easy,
Mhm.
but it is something that they could physically see and touch and do to do it into a mind map. I would definitely suggest that. I hadn't thought about that.
I'm just wondering too, because
Mm,
is this a lot of dyslexic learners are highly visual.
mhm,
So when you're doing this, are these
mm.
mostly words that you're doing? Or are you also drawing pictures, or how is this going?
All above, you're free. All mine, my free verse poetry, everything I do is you're free. You're free to communicate however you want. So they can do pictures. Well, when I show them, though, I show them the way that I do it. And then sometimes I have them take control and they can do it their way. But uh, the word is either an acronym, or acrostic or initial, but the word is just something to trigger the brain and remembering what you had read. And it
Oh,
goes
okay.
like this. But you could Google mind maps.
Yep.
It's big. So
Yeah.
yeah, but they could see it visually and colorfully, and it appeals to the evaluative skills, and it breaks it down for them.
I
But
have not done them a lot of.
mhm. Yeah, so I started doing it when I was taught in graduate school, and then now I don't have to. I just got it up here like that, where I can
Move. I've
put
lost
it
you.
in. But we got to get into free verse, Lewis. Free
Yes.
verse poetry. So my testing anxiety was possibly number one, but I want to say it's right up there with my writing anxiety. Next, definitely my speaking was after that. But so I decided I was never going to write again. Okay. So I would have to write in school for papers. And then after that, I discovered I wanted to heal at 40. I decided to do journaling. Well, journaling was okay for me. I mean, I still am an advocate for journaling, for figuring out from your subconscious what you were feeling and why. But for me, it was poetry. I started just because we have something with dyslexia. I don't know if y'all are aware that I've seen one article on it, and I still try to search for it because I didn't know it was going to be that impactful in my life. So I never kept the article. But list form thinking, we think in list. So that makes sense because where I've always forced myself to speak out in clear sentences for everybody to understand and to speak that way. So I definitely feel like I have what's called list form thinking. So I started writing down lists of things I saw in pictures. And then sometimes naturally a rhyme would come up and I would be like, oh, great, I did a rhyme, but I was still free to write on just what I was seeing and feeling from the picture. So I got rid of my writing anxiety through the free verse poetry. Then I started writing short stories and writing chapters and books and programs. But it started with just free verse, where I was free to write in a list,
Oh,
basically.
that's fantastic.
It's
We
a,
have a question.
I have
Chris
hundreds.
Lashworth is very good.
Mm,
What would you say was your biggest challenge as a dyslexic learner?
mm.
Excellent question.
So being misunderstood that I was not stupid or slow, and that I am very smart, and that I can just do differently. It's actually a gift, and I didn't realize that it was a gift. So now, when I got the confidence, I started drawing, and I could realize how well I could draw. I did poetry, like I say, I do photography. These are all certain gifts. But when I teach, it's not typical. I mean, I do mess up frequently when I'm reading something with them, when I'm writing. But you know what? I say, that's okay. I laugh at myself when I do it. So that I can do anything, obviously, that anybody else can, because I was working on my doctorate. I am a teacher and a tutor. So I guess that's the biggest. Did I answer the question?
Yes, but you know what you just said then, making mistakes is okay.
Mm,
And that's,
mm,
that's huge to allow children to say it's okay to make mistakes with because that's how we actually learn.
Right.
Mhm.
You know, whereas
Nobody ever said that.
yeah, because we see a mistake,
Illustrated.
it's wrong, but we have to accept mistakes are part
Mhm.
and a
Yeah.
positive part of learning.
Mhm.
A
Yeah.
big part of learning.
Yeah,
That goes back to the standardized testing that you were saying. You know, if you have to come up with the one right answer, that's not really real life. That's
Mhm.
regurgitation. Like real life is
Yeah.
thinking and making mistakes and trying it again. And I think that's one of the things that we don't do a real good job of letting our students know that it's okay. I think it's great that you can show them that. And that also
Mhm.
that brings down their anxiety. You
Oh,
know,
big time. The parents say they're so glad you're dyslexic.
yes,
it makes a difference. It's kind of like a
Yeah.
mentor. I think they
Oh,
need
yeah.
mentors. We need more people. I mean, this is one of the reasons why we do all this work is to bring
Mhm.
awareness in the schools and other areas in life too, just so they understand these kids more and that the kids understand, as you said, you found out in your 40s that
Mhm.
that this is a gift. And you know, some
Mhm.
people argue that term, but I think there's something to be said for understanding your strengths.
Yeah, it's an umbrella of dyslexia with the spectrum of being mild, moderate, severe. So depending where you are, so for me, it's the gift.
Yeah, that's
that's a
fantastic.
positive
Mhm.
thing to say. It's a gift.
Yes. If you read my story, which I think you had, Lewis, I say I realized it all had to happen. The teachers being ugly to me, the peers, my brother, the hard struggles all had to happen because then I wouldn't be here doing what I am today and who I am today. And everybody has struggles of some kind. But for me to have this peace with it is so good. And it's not just the peace because I have the gift, it's because I had overcome, I mean, I've overcome in a way with the fact that I don't say to myself every day, I can't do this. I don't say that anymore. If that thought even enters my mind, I say, that's not true.
Hmm.
Wow, that's good. I haven't got there yet.
Oh, yeah.
Work on that, Lois. That's your
Ah,
homework.
writing and
That's
me.
Stop
your,
doing that right
Enemies.
now.
yeah, you bypass that thought and say,
Well, it's
it's
a
not
habit.
true.
You know,
Yeah,
when you get into these negative thinking,
Oh, yeah, it's a
that's a
pattern.
habit. And it's a
Yeah, and a
pattern of
pattern.
negative thinking
Mhm.
that you have
Yeah.
to retrain your mind literally to and replace that negative thought process with something positive until that becomes your new habit.
Mhm.
But it's
Oh,
not
that's
it takes
easy.
work.
It
It's
does,
no,
but it's worth
no,
it.
but it's worth it. 110% worth it. So I know when I still can feel some anger and shame. I go to Bible verses on strength and compassion because that's the highest form of care for oneself, self-compassion, and that always helps in prayer. But again, there's other ways of doing alternative, holistic ways of doing the same thing.
another question from Kieran. Here is a question for all of you. If a dyslexic kid were to come up to one of you guys and was talking that he is stupid because he is dyslexic, what would you guys say to that kid?
No.
That sounds like
That's what
my
we
kid
just
in the other
Yeah.
room. I think
that,
he's on YouTube right now, so he knows what his mom would say.
Mhm.
Anybody else want to tell this kid?
Tricia. I mean, we were
I
just
say,
saying that, weren't we?
Uh,
yeah. I say, you're wonderfully made. NASA looks for people with dyslexia because you think in 3D. You can think up and innovate and create, and you can give it with such drive that not a people can do that to be able to do that abilities and to come up with solutions that most people can't. The outside of the box thinking is absolutely amazing that you have. And I bet you the main thing that you don't know about yourself is you're kind. A lot of people with dyslexia care a lot for people, animals, and nature. So I don't know how many times you've thought about that. So I really want you to not say those things to yourself because you know why? You are smart. You can do this. You are loved, and I love you. I tell the kids I love them.
Yes, yes. And I think you're right. The
Mhm,
first thing we have to do is start with the positive affirmations on a
mhm,
twice daily, tri daily basis. So we
Mhm.
replace the negative with the positive.
I say put it on a mirror, like where they are every day.
So
Put
you
it
see it.
somewhere where they can see it. So all affirmations go across all cultures, all religions, all beliefs. So those are the most powerful things you could do. And to, again, have them write out somewhere and they can see those words.
I'm going to get my sticky notes out after this.
That's right. That's right.
Every
Everywhere to say it. And it'll
Kieran,
become their inner thought because they're going to see it enough and say it enough
yeah.
eventually.
did we answer your question, Kieran? I hope so.
Yeah.
Oh, that is fantastic. Tricia, thank you. Learned a lot.
Oh, good.
You
Good.
know, and that positive affirmation to change our mindsets before we start anything else, I think that we can all do.
Yeah. Figure out the stress and the triggers and then go from there. See, then we get to how to help their literacy.
Yeah, yeah, and that all comes. Well, thank you so much. I've
Yeah.
got to
Thank you
thank
guys.
my son Isaac and his buddy Chris.
Thanks, Isaac.
Tremendous support because I could not do this without them. Listeners, not listeners, Trish, where can people find you?
Okay. Well, my website is www.myelbert, ELEBERT, no, ELBERT.com, my Elbert. But I did was an addition in the middle position when I spelled out loud. So I would have been best if I write it down and seen it written. But my Elbert, ELBERT.com.
Are you on Twitter and you're on Twitter and
Yeah.
LinkedIn?
Oh yeah. So it's T Cook Tutor, TUTOR, T Cook Tutor.
T Cook Tutor.
Mm-hmm.
And Lisa, where can listeners find you?
So I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn when I'm on LinkedIn, and here on YouTube with Lois. Our dog has made an appearance, and also my son who's in the background.
Yep.
And this one
Hi.
is
What, I'm sorry?
Kieran or Evan?
That's Kieran.
Kieran.
Hey, Kieran.
Kieran. Delighted to see you. And we've smashed the, what are we saying? Yes, he said, no, I said, did it answer the question? Smash the like and subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications for uploads to my channel. And on my channel, I read to children, I have poetry for kids, and my favourite book is Diary of a Killer Cat, and that's available. Find me on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, YouTube, and my website is loisletchford.com. And Instagram. And I'm the author of Reversed a Memoir, where I tell the story of my son who did his dramatic failure and his enormous turnaround. So join us next week. Next week, we're listening to an engineer who completed his degree at RPI during the pandemic and his struggles with learning to read. So we'll explore his experience and advice for fellow students. Oh, and my son is telling me, where can you get my book? You look on Amazon. Check out the YouTube for the videos on my story. Pardon? And the book is now on audio. It's audio, so find and I'll just touch something. Sorry? Get it through? I don't know, where do you get it through? Amazon. And Amazon and my website. Lovely. Thank you very much. I've got to get the whole lot. I need to put that all down. Thank you for joining us. Please share it with others. And Trish will stay in touch with you.
Thank you, Lois. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much.
Talking to you.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Lisa.
you too. Bye-bye.
Fantastic.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, thank you.